Hey everybody, welcome back to New Orleans. We are down here by the modern Mississippi for the playoff drive brought to you by Byers Auto. This is the Hilton River Walk. The Buckeyes will be here shortly as they travel down from Columbus to New Orleans. This is the team hotel for the Buckeyes. The Sugar Bowl is tomorrow night. It's finally here. Last test is done. Ohio State's getting ready to get on that plane, and that roster will be locked in. Both teams will be complete with their COVID testing. That availability report will be out tomorrow, but it does certainly seem like Ohio State is going to be near full strength. The Big Ten changed those rules that might have opened the door for several guys to return for the Buckeyes, probably starting with Chris Olave and Baron Browning, but we'll see closer to kickoff. But Birmingham certainly is trending towards Ohio State getting pretty close to full power to play a team where they need to be.
Yeah, the head coach's press conference this morning, Ryan Day said it's a floating target this year as far as 100% availability, and it really is. They just don't know from today to tomorrow when it's going to happen. That's why you're not going to see that availability report till 2 hours before the game tomorrow night. But really today was about coach speak because it looked like both Dabo Swinney and Ryan Day were trying to say nothing today in any way that would rile up the other side. There was a lot of mutual respect, a lot of we love Clemson, Clemson loves us, I love Dabo, Dabo loves me. Whatever, man. The Buckeyes are wanting to play this game very, very badly. It's great for the Buckeyes to have Olave back. We believe that Baron Browning will be back. At this point, you don't know what happens between now and then, but if you're going to play this game, after everything all year, you don't want to come in here shorthanded.
Yeah, that's Berm. This is Spencer Holbrook. When we were going through that press conference on Thursday morning, Spencer, all right, was there anything that's really juicy out of this? Because there's been so much back and forth and subtle shots, and sign stealing from Ohio State side, accusing Clemson, Dabo doing what he's doing with his poll. But this morning, as Berm said, there was not any of that. You could just tell that they're ready to be done with all that and play this game.
Berm said it best. Dabo didn't say anything, and that's pretty much the headline, because I kind of did expect him to give one more final little jab at Ohio State, but he didn't, and that's my main takeaway is he just even seems locked in when a guy like him can never seem to fully get locked in on just playing the game.
Well, he has to, because again, everyone's affected by COVID, right? So yesterday, we're finishing up the playoff drive presented by Byers Auto yesterday, and then we learned that Tony Elliott, Clemson's offensive coordinator, is not going to be here. So
and that's
things
a big
change.
deal.
It's a big deal. So Dabo better be focused, right?
I wonder how big. I'll let you evaluate that, Spencer. I wonder how big of a deal it really is, because if this happened, and it did happen for Ohio State when Ryan Day was out, so much of it is collaborative. You've got these scripts and those buckets that Ohio State uses for play calling. I have to imagine. I don't know the way Clemson operates their program intimately. I know that Dabo's not that hands-on as a play caller. Certainly not compared to Ryan Day. So maybe it's a bigger deal for Clemson than it would be for Ohio State. I don't know. I just have to assume that over the last 2 weeks, they had already done so much heavy lifting. Like, we're going to call this in this situation. I know that there's also a rhythm to being a play caller and in adjustments. Maybe from that perspective, it's more. I'm having a hard time, I guess, figuring out how much significance to put on it.
The way I look at it is Ohio State had Kevin Wilson to fall back on, who is a very experienced, well-respected play caller, has done it at every level and has done it very well at multiple programs. He was able to step in and basically take over for Ryan Day and do exactly what he does.
Right.
And I'm not saying Brandon Streeter is not that, but he just isn't that. And he's a former Clemson quarterback. He knows their offense just as well as Tony Elliott does, I'm sure. But at the same time, he's not a Kevin Wilson. You're not going from Ryan Day to Kevin Wilson. You're going from a very experienced play caller and a top head coaching candidate in the country to a quarterback's coach that really we haven't seen call plays before. So I think where Ohio State had the rhythm down and Kevin Wilson was able to keep Ryan Day's pace and rhythm in the play calling, I wonder if that affects Clemson. I'm not saying it will, but that's interesting.
And that's definitely the word for it. We don't know how that's going to play out for Clemson. It goes without saying that they would not have signed up to do this in that game. That's the way 2020 works. They also have a veteran quarterback who's won, 34 games. He knows the offense inside out. I think, that's a different beast as well, that Trevor Lawrence probably doesn't need Elliott to hold his hands.
Right. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is 34 of 35 in his career as a starting quarterback at Clemson. He knows the offense, as you said, in and out. It certainly affects other guys maybe, and it's not like Trevor Lawrence is calling plays for Clemson, but he will have the ability to check in and out of things based on what he sees, and he's obviously good enough to be able to handle that, I think. I don't disagree at all with what Spencer said. In fact, you made a very, really good point about Kevin Wilson is someone that's done it for decades. But I think between Dabo Swinney and Trevor Lawrence handling the majority of the offset, I think they'll be able to be okay. I don't think it's going to be a game-changing thing.
We talked earlier in the week about Justin Fields and his thumb, and everyone has kind of downplayed that, and not that it's not going to be an issue. I hope that when we're talking about the availability report for both Ohio State and Clemson, we know that that's an absence now with the coaching staff, that we get to see the teams at full strength. And I know how hard that is to a request to make. I hope that Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence both have an opportunity to do all the things that make them special so that we can see another classic battle between these two. There's just a strange vibe around all of this, which is the 2020 thing. You know, we've been walking around here in the French Quarter and down by the river, and there's just no people. And normally these programs would get together, or Ohio State would be here, and there would be 50,000 people in scarlet and gray, even if they couldn't get in the building. That part is just strange. We've gotten used to being in these stadiums that are empty, but it hasn't felt like a big game. Like Ohio State's still, they're not going to be here for a couple more hours.
Yeah.
That part is just weird. And I hope that when the game arrives that they can make up for that and give us that back, at least to end this year on a higher note.
It's New Orleans on New Year's Eve, and there's no one here. It's very wild to me.
It's been talked about all year that these teams need to find ways to bring their own energy and to bring their own juice to the stadium. And if Ohio State versus Clemson doesn't get the juice going for the Buckeyes, then there is really no hope that they're going to get it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, again, as we mentioned yesterday, almost ad nauseum, the entire reason that they've suffered through this last year is to get back to this opportunity to beat Clemson, to play Clemson. And yeah, absolutely. If either one of these teams isn't full strength, it's going to kind of feel like we got shorted, from a just like what could have been perspective. But I don't think the Buckeyes are in a position right now where they're worried about it. I think that they feel pretty good about what they're doing. We've got some insight into who's coming, who's not. Seems like things are going to be pretty good.
Who's the difference maker for you tomorrow night, Spencer?
I think it's Haskell Garrett. I'm gonna go right to the All-American himself. When you talk about trying to stop a running quarterback, it starts with keeping him in the pocket. And when you talk about trying to stop a dynamic running back that has broken ACC record after ACC record, it starts in the middle. And I think he affects the game in so many ways where he can get the quarterback on the ground in the passing game. Trevor Lawrence is not an easy quarterback to bring down. He can stuff the run against anybody. I would take him against anybody in the middle of a defense. And he frees up guys on the outside like Jonathan Cooper and Tyreek Smith to get to the quarterback. I think he affects the game in so many different ways. He's so powerful, so strong. If he's successful, I think Ohio State can keep Clemson's offense at least under wraps a little bit. And I think that's the key. If he's blocked well, then Ohio State, I think, is really going to struggle.
Firm?
I mean, outside of the obvious?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, rule number one, I mean, Justin Fields can't play like he did against Northwestern if the Buckeyes want to win. Right. So that's, I think, goes without saying. But to me, the guy that changes the game for Ohio State and is a potential slower downer of Clemson is Josh Proctor. I really think with the way that Clemson uses Amari Rodgers, he's really their only receiving threat. They use him a lot out of the slot. Ohio State's been very fluid this year, trying to find someone to play that slot corner spot after losing Cameron Brown. Proctor, obviously, athletically, is the type of guy that should be able to do multiple things. He's also the guy we saw knock the bleep out of Wisconsin's quarterback last year. Did the same thing 2 weeks ago against Northwestern. He's the guy I think that can make when it comes to this game, you need playmakers. And the Buckeyes have a solid defense full of very consistent, reliable guys like Haskell Garrett, like Jonathan Cooper, like Tuff Borland, Pete Werner. I think you have to have a game changer, make a game-changing play. And Josh Proctor, to me, is the game changer in the back half of the Buckeyes defense. And whether it's an interception, whether it's knocking someone out of the game, whether it's whatever, I think that Josh Proctor is the guy that can deliver a momentum swing one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because he's also the guy that could very easily slip and fall and let Trevor run for a 67-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I think that this is a game, that I would have gladly talked about Josh Proctor a lot more, but I did that with Zach Bourne from his boat on Buckeye Q on Thursday morning. On the offensive side, if you're talking about Justin Fields playing his best, we know that Chris Olave is back, or expected to be back on Friday night. We know what that'll do for the passing game. Him and Garrett Wilson are a handful for everybody. But you have to have time to throw, and if there's been one part, which is crazy, we're talking about the best guard in America, and I think the best center in America, Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis. There have been a couple times where the blitzes from the interior have gotten to Ohio State. I'm not pinning that solely on them. I'm not an offensive lineman. I know it's a difficult job and a difficult position, but that interior of the line is going to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And those two guys, if you're going to prove that you're the best in America, that you're a potential be worthy of a first-round draft pick, Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis are going to have more on their shoulders in this game than they'll have in any other game, and that's just a unit interior that I would be watching for Ohio State.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I think it's really important. One thing that we probably haven't talked about enough is the loss of J.K. Dobbins as a pass blocker for Ohio State.
Yeah.
And we have seen Master T really struggle in that role. We have not seen Trey Sermon been used to do that. But Wisconsin, who has given Ohio State a ton of trouble defensively the last couple times, rushing up the middle.
Yeah.
Clemson did the same thing. They're going to blitz in the middle of the defense. They don't really you don't get to Justin Fields on the edge because he will outrun you.
Yeah.
Getting to him straight up the middle is the key. And I think that it's an important piece that we haven't really talked about. The Buckeyes running backs are going to need to be able to step up and fill a hole.
Every time you talk about this game, there's a new thing to break down, a new matchup to dissect. Once it's here, I think this all gets settled down. We just get to see them in between the lines. But both of those, when you're talking about going against a Brent Venables defense, I know Kirk Herbstreit loves to talk about a Brent Venables defense. Brent Venables defense. It's true though. Like there are just some things that are too good, too important not to talk about. It's so good at creating pressure in ways that you didn't think were possible on the football field. Ohio State has to be ready for that. And I don't know how you prepare for it, but they have to.
Well, they prepared for it by rewatching that Indiana tape because Indiana blitzed more than any team I've ever seen.
Great.
And you have to be able to go back to that and look at it and say, okay, how did we fix this? How do we adjust to this in the second half? Because the Buckeyes got a lot better against that in the second half. The offense struggled because
I wonder if Ohio State watched any of this is kind of a different way to look at it. I wonder if they watched any of the Boston College Clemson game. Because they do. Jeff Hafley does a lot of things similar to what Kerry Combs does, and
I bet they did.
I would bet a lot of
they
money
had had a lot of success.
I would also wager significantly that Jeff Hafley has been on the phone potentially over the last couple weeks.
That's important because Jeff Hafley's defense knows what to do against Clemson, and know also.
I want to say this though, they still gave up 40-some points.
No, but in that first half, they looked very good.
Yes, and obviously talent between Clemson and Boston College is so wide that you knew that they were eventually going to pass them in that game. But Jeff Hafley, much like Ryan Day, much like Kevin Wilson, much like every other guy that's going to be in this building, has been dreaming about getting a chance to go against Clemson again. And I know he's been on the phone with Ryan Day this week.
Yeah, we've reached the point of playoff drive, a full week where we're now talking about Boston College. So that tells me
I got us there.
It's time to wrap it up. This has been the latest playoff drive brought to you by Byers Auto. That's Spencer Holbrook, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. It's one more day away. Happy New Year's to everybody who has been following along. We'll have some more coverage coming your way, of course, before kickoff on Friday night down here from New Orleans. This has been Playoff Drive, brought to you by Byers Auto at lettermenrow.com.